Namaste. Welcome to Citti Media. My name is Abhishek Naipathy, and I will be your host today. So, today we're going to be discussing the current events happening in the Northeast, specifically the Mizoram elections that are upcoming and the insurgency that's been taking place. To speak more about this issue, I have an expert with me, Dr. Ankita Dutta ji. You guys have definitely seen her on the show before. So, without further ado, welcome to the show, Doctor. Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste. Namaste, Abhishek ji. Thank you so much for that warm welcome and the humble introduction. It is always a pleasure for me to be back in Chitti Media. Thank you. Looking forward for the conversation.
Definitely.
Thank you.
So I was thinking for the beginning of our conversation, let's start with the Mizoram elections. So, what could you tell us about the different political parties that are involved and what their chances are in winning the election? And maybe you can go into what the pressing issues are that will determine the outcome.
Yes. Yes, a good topic to begin with. Uh, the upcoming elections to the 40-member Mizoram Legislative Assembly is extremely crucial, I would say, especially in the backdrop of the ongoing strife in Manipur, and also considering the fact that it is being held just a few months before the Lok Sabha elections scheduled for early next year. The ruling MNF, that is the Mizo National Front, led by incumbent Chief Minister Zoram Thanga, is looking for a second straight term, and Zoram Thanga is seeking re-election from his existing constituency of Aizawl East 1 for the record 7 time. But this time, there is a new political party in Mizoram, that is the ZPM, the Zoram People's Movement, which is likely to play a significant role in the elections. It was formed in 2017 as a coalition of various parties, and the ZPM this time is contesting from all the 40 seats. Currently, the ruling MNF holds 28 seats in the Mizoram Assembly. The Congress has 5, and the BJP has got 1. But the BJP has been gradually expanding its footprints in the Northeast since our Prime Minister Narendra Modi came to power in 2014. And in Mizoram, with a seasoned two-time MLA, his name is K. Bechua, leaving the ruling MNF to contest under the BJP, the party is eyeing upon a more number of assembly seats this time than the last, that is in 2018. I would say it is definitely expected to gain in the areas inhabited by the Christian Maras, Siaha district in particular, although it wouldn't gain votes enough to defeat the MNF until the Congress collapses completely in Mizoram. And also, a significant majority of the population of the Lai community in Mizoram, they are MNF supporters, and they are likely to vote for the MNF this time as well. And although some very sensitive and contentious issues such as beef eating continue to implore the party leadership of the BJP in the Northeast, but the party has been able to carve out for itself a significant presence among the Christians in Manipur, Nagaland, and Mizoram of late. And when we look into the history of the state, Mizoram, it has either been ruled by the MNF or the Congress since it became a separate state in 1987 after the signing of the Mizo Peace Accord by the then Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi. The MNF has ruled the state for 3 terms, and the Congress has had 4 terms in power. So, for almost 3 decades, the post of the Chief Minister has passed between two leaders, the Congress chief Lalthan Haula and MNF Supremo Zoram Thanga. And in the last assembly elections of 2018, the Congress was voted out of power by the MNF, which had a vote share of around 37%. But for the first time since 1989, a new aspirant for the post of the chief minister this time is in the reckoning in Mizoram. He is the former finance minister of Mizoram, Lal Sauta, who is well known for his policies of fiscal prudence. He is the new face leading the Congress party this time, and the Congress leadership. it has always been arguing that Mizoram needs a party like the Congress to preserve its religious identity. Why? Because the MNF is a part of the BJP's NEDA. NEDA is the Northeast Democratic Alliance led by Assam Chief Minister Dr. Himanta Biswa Sharma. So, the formation of the Mizoram Secular Alliance, that is the MSA, by the Congress recently can be understood in this context. The MSA, that is the Mizoram Secular Alliance, was formed by the Congress with two local parties, the People's Conference and the Zoram Nationalist Party, which, however, does not have any representation in the current Mizoram Assembly. The aim was to unitedly fight against the BJP. And the ZPM, the new political party, Zoram People's Movement, as I said, it has emerged as a new challenge this time to this binary electoral equation of the Congress versus the MNF in Mizoram, especially in the urban areas such as Aizawl. And also, the Zoramthanga led MNF is going to be answerable to the electorate for the high debt and several pending development works in the state, because the state is drowned in debt currently, with loans primarily being used to sustain the failing state machinery and pay salaries to the government employees. But nevertheless, I would say the MNF with a strong presence. The MNF has a very strong presence in the rural areas of Mizoram, and it is expected to have an edge over all other parties for the moment, and especially with the Congress votes of the Chakmas of Mamit, Launtlai, and Lunglei districts having now shifted en masse to the MNF. The BJP has all the chances of being in the main opposition this time.
Okay. So thank you for that answer. I think now you gave us a good idea of the different political parties and historically how they've had control of the region. And um, now I'm thinking, how do some of the other issues, like the issues of drug trafficking and the refugee crisis for Myanmar, how does that going to play into the elections?
Yes, right. So you mentioned about drug trafficking. This is something which is very important, which is going to play a key role in determining the electoral calculations in Mizoram. And not just drug trafficking, the issues of drug addiction and alcoholism as well. And in the run up to the assembly elections, also this time, the Congress and as well as the new political party, the Zoram People's Movement, both of them have openly addressed these issues in their respective election campaigns. In fact, the high rates of HIV/AIDS in the state, uh, it is directly correlated to the use of drugs. Also, a rapid rise in the rates of addiction among the youth needs to be understood in the light of the easy availability of drugs in the state. Even the last assembly elections of 2018 saw several debates between different political parties over liquor bans, with the then ruling Congress party opposing total prohibition, but the main opposition, MNF, advocating for a complete ban. And during its tenure, the MNF, in fact, had imposed a ban on locally brewed grape wine in Mizoram, after which bottles of alcohol were confiscated from shops. But the government again later permitted its sale. And also the ongoing, when you ask me about other issues, so the ongoing smuggling of explosives, of foreign origin cigarettes, weapons, arms, and ammunition. This is another major cause of concern for the state of Mizoram, especially in the border districts of Champhai, Siaha, and Lunglei, which are situated along the Indo-Myanmar international border. And Mizoram is also one of the fastest growing hubs of gold smuggling from China. So, in the backdrop of these developments and many more, I think Mizoram needs a political party that can deliver on the aspirations of the common people, and also help address the growing tide of pro immigrant sentiment in the state from the perspective of India's national security.
Okay. So can we ask what is Mizoram's government? What is their take on the refugee issue? right now with the Kuki Chin refugees?
Yes, yes, this is a very important question since we are talking about the Mizoram elections. Uh, because the ruling party, the MNF's handling of the refugees and displaced Kuki Chin Zo people from Myanmar, Manipur, and also Bangladesh, and also the rising tide of Zo nationalism in the state as a reaction to the displacement of the community in the recent times is eventually expected to work in favor of the MNF. For those of who might not be aware in the audience, I would like to mention that hundreds and thousands of Kuki Chin refugees displaced who have been displaced from their homes in Myanmar and strife-torn Manipur have made Mizoram their home, and Mizoram is already fine. It is already a financially burdened state. Now, here we must take note of the fact that both Mizoram and Manipur share long international borders with Myanmar. Six out of Mizoram's 11 districts share a more than 500-kilometer long, unfenced, and mountainous border with the Chin state of Myanmar. And Mizoram also shares a more than 300-kilometer long, unfenced border with Bangladesh. Directions were being given Orders were being given to the governments of both Manipur and Mizoram by the Union Ministry of Home Affairs in April this year, just a month before the outbreak of the Manipur conflict, to identify the illegal immigrants from Myanmar at the earliest and obtain their biometric and biographic details. But this was met with vehement resistance from the ruling MNF. In fact, in the month of June this year, June 2023, both Manipur and Mizoram were directed by the central government to complete the campaign by the end of September and prepare a plan of action to initiate this process. But the Chief Minister of Mizoram, Mr. Zoramthanga, and his government has been consistently defying the central government's order to deport Myanmar nationals by refusing to collect their biometric data. Why? Because it has said that it could not do so because it would amount to discrimination against people who are of their own blood. And much before the outbreak of the conflict in Manipur, Mizoram had already opened its doors to refugees who were fleeing the army crackdown in Myanmar. Earlier, earlier also, the government of Mizoram had ignored the center's orders to close the border several times. Now, it is because the Mizos believe that the Kuki Chins of Myanmar and Bangladesh, they share with the Mizos a common ethnicity. And these people, the Kuki Chins, whom the Mizos consider as their own kinsmen, the Mizos argue that these people were left on the other side of the border after the coming of the British and the signing of the Treaty of Yandabu in 1826, which led to the redrawing of the borders in the northeast by the British government. In fact, just a few months back, the minister who currently holds the portfolio of information and public relations in the Mizoram cabinet, I remember he had specifically mentioned that the state has not collected the biometric data of any immigrant till date, and the government has also decided not to do so on humanitarian grounds. So the stance of the Mizoram government is clear, but it is very, very dangerous. It has clearly said that no move can be made on this matter till the elections are over. And refugees have been entering en masse into Mizoram from Myanmar since the February 2021 military coup in Myanmar. And the center has been repeatedly requesting the government of Mizoram to check this inflow of refugees with immediate effect, because the state governments do not have the power to grant refugee status to any foreigner. But the government of Zoramthanga has been very firm in its stand, and and as a result of this, the government of Manipur also has sought an extension for the collection of biometric data of the refugees. Although Manipur had begun this process in July this year with the assistance of officials from the NCRB, that is the National Crime Records Bureau, but Chief Minister Biren Singh had recently said that he would request the central government, the Ministry of Home Affairs, for an extension of the timeline by a year or so, since the ongoing conflict in Manipur is also leading to a delay of the exercise.
Okay, so can we now discuss how this stance that the government took, how that affects the Hindus who live in Mizoram?
Yes. So, see, first we need to also understand that how come these refugees, before we move on to the Hindu issue, how come these refugees are settling in Mizoram so easily? One, I mentioned that these Mizos, they consider these Kukis as belonging to their same ethnicity. So, we must also understand that a majority of the Kuki Chin people who are migrating from Myanmar, they are Christians. So, it is easy for them to settle in the Christian majority state of Mizoram and adopt the Mizo culture and language. Also, the similarity of their facial features with the local Mizos makes them almost indistinguishable. So, who is a Mizo, who is from Myanmar? It's very difficult to distinguish because of their facial features. And it is suspected that and I am saying this from my experience, a huge number of people residing in Mizoram, especially in the border districts, and calling themselves Mizos, they are illegal immigrants from Myanmar. It has been suspected since a long time, and the region that is today inhabited by the Mizos, that is present day Mizoram, this was the original homeland of the Hindu Riyangs and the Chakmas, who are also collectively known as the Bru community. And these Hindu Riyangs and Chakmas, they were systematically made to leave Mizoram for resisting conversions in different stages. First, during the MNF led insurgency, and again later in the 1990s. It was during 1997 98, and once more again in 2009 2010. Census data clearly shows census data of 1961. As per the census data of 1961, the Riyangs of Mizoram were 100% Hindus, but almost more than 90% of them are Christians now. They were allowed by the church to stay in Mizoram only on the ground that they convert to Christianity and adopt the Mizo culture and language. One of the major demands of the Riyangs has been the establishment of a Bru Autonomous Council in Mizoram, just like on the lines of what the Chakmas, the Maras, and the Lais have their own autonomous councils in Mizoram. But the Christian Mizos are firmly against the establishment of such a council for the Riyangs. Ethnic cleansing of these Hindu Riyangs from their own homeland, that is from Mizoram, was followed by the removal of their names from the voters' lists. Their lands were encroached by the Mizo churches. Chief Minister Zoramthanga has cultivated the image of a leader of the Mizos, including that of the Kuki people from across the border. uh, it was in 2019, I remember, this advisor to the MNF and Mizoram Sports Minister, Robert Romavia, had clearly mentioned that the current government headed by Zoram Thanga had no international boundary as far as the unification of Mizo communities was concerned. And he had also mentioned that special allocations would be made in the budget, in the state's budget, for the unification of all Mizo tribes living in different parts of not just the Northeast but across India and the world. So we can understand the dangerous dimensions of this problem.
Now, what happened to the Hindu communities that were displaced? Are they now in like refugee camps in other parts of India, or are they?
Several of them, yeah, they
Yeah.
are still living in refugee camps in several remote areas along the Tripura Mizoram border. I had spoken about
Okay.
this earlier in several of my earlier talks. Yes.
Okay. So now, can we get into the issue of the demand for a separate cookie land? I'm sure this is also
Yes.
connected with the Christian conversions and all that. So can you speak a little
Hmm.
bit about the separatism?
Yes, yes. This also I had mentioned in a few of my earlier talks about the demand for a separate Kuki Zomi homeland, especially from the perspective of India's national security. And when the violence was going on in Manipur, in the month of June, July, a press statement was issued by 10 Kuki Chin MLAs of the Manipur Legislative Assembly, raising the allegation that that the ongoing violence was perpetrated by the majority Maipi community, tacitly supported by the current BJP government in Manipur. So we need to understand that the political aspiration of separation from Manipur, uh, which is being harbored by these Kuki chins since a long time, is now being used by the Kuki political leaders to seek and demand a separate administration for themselves under the Constitution of India. So, in this context, the agenda for establishing a separate Kuki Zomi homeland or Greater Mizoram, it is known by several other names like Greater Mizoram, Zoram, Zalengam, or the Land of Freedom. So, this is something which we need to analyze further because the political imagination of this separate Kuki and Zomi homeland, having a concrete, a well-defined territory, it goes back to the late 1980s and the early 1990s, when the Kuki National Organization, the KNO, it is the first and the largest of all the Kuki Zomi militant groups when the KNO was formed. And this demand for establishing a separate Kuki land has surfaced periodically ever since. And the recent violence in Manipur again saw the resurfacing of this demand for a separate Kuki administration. And we must not forget that the MNF, since we started by talking about the Mizoram elections, we must not forget that the MNF, led by the current Chief Minister of Mizoram, Zoramthanga, had once fought for an independent Greater Mizoram, which is nothing but the separate Kuki land. And this Greater Mizoram had included all those areas which today constitute a part of the imaginary Kuki homeland. And the idea of a separate Kuki homeland has emerged from the belief that the hill areas of Manipur adjoining Mizoram and Myanmar, which has undergone, these areas have undergone si- demographic changes, massive demographic changes over the past several years, is inhabited by the Kuki community largely, who share, as I mentioned, who share affinity of ancestry, religious, and cultural belief systems with the Mizos. And this term for a separate Kuki Zomi homeland, the term Zalengam, was coined to give shape to the idea of the establishment of a separate Kuki and Zomi homeland. So the question here is not about whether this demand for a separate Kuki land is going to materialize anytime soon, but we certainly cannot overlook the threat associated with it, because the declaration by the 10 Kuki MLAs of Manipur for a separate administrative arrangement and their demand for separation from Manipur is just another step forward in somehow realizing their separate political aspiration of a Christian zonation and the establishment of Mizo hegemony in the region. So this has every potential for the outbreak of another round of conflict. Very dangerous.
I mean, I know we're focusing mostly on the Northeast today, but this does seem to be a common trend. I mean, when people talk about breaking India forces, like this is another thing that's a threat to our civilization,
Right.
to Bharat civilization. So, uh, I mean, thank you for giving us insight on that. Can we now talk more about the Manipur issue? You gave a little bit about it, but let's talk about the recent developments in Moray. I think that's how you said the town name, the border town, and the history of the Naga Kuki clashes that have been happening over there.
Yes, truly. There is just no end in sight to the Manipur issue. So many people have already died. So many are still languishing in the relief camps. And with regard to your specific question on the sensitive border town of Moray, I would like to elaborate a little more on this. I'll take some time to elaborate because this is something which is very close to me, also to my research. A few disturbing incidences in Moray recently has again aroused our attention to the bloody past that Moray has had been a witness to. Just a few days back, on the morning of 31st October, a mighty police officer was brutally killed by Kuki militants while he was inspecting the construction of a helipad in Moray. And not just this, the Kuki militants also executed in what I would say an extremely well planned ambush on a team of police commandos who were en route to More on the afternoon of that same fateful day. More is located at a distance of about 110 kilometers southeast of Imphal on the Indo-Myanmar road. That is the Imphal-Dimapur section of the National Highway 2. It is a flourishing border town, More, which is inhabited mainly by the Kukis, the Meiteis, a smaller section of the Meiteis and Mizos, and it also has a significant population of Tamil Hindus, Punjabis, Biharis, and Marwaris. The town of Tamu in Myanmar, it is the counterpart border town of More. Cookies have long attempted to establish their social and political control over More and Manipur's international border with Myanmar through a systematic genocide of the native Naga and the Tamil Hindu communities residing here. In fact, many areas in More along the Imphal More section of the national highway earlier used to be the settlements of the Hindu Zeliangrong Nagas and the Rongme Nagas. But unfortunately, there is hardly any Naga settlement, hardly any Naga population left today in More. In fact, it would not be an exaggeration to say that in many ways, the Nagas of Manipur have been the most affected because of Kuki violence, perhaps even much more than the Meiteis. And this violence dates back to the British times when there were several attempts by the nomadic Kukis to destroy Naga villages and forcibly occupy them. I remember it was between December 1917 and May 1918. In the hills of Manipur, several villages of the Kabui Nagas and the Tangkhul Nagas were raided mercilessly in the middle of the night and destroyed by the Kukis. Many Nagas were killed. Many of them were taken away as slaves to Burma, that is present day Myanmar. The situation continued even after 1947. In October 1964, there was a deadly incident when the Kukis had again shown their inhumanity and beastly nature. When one night, there was an incident one night when about 2 dozen Kuki youth had forcibly entered a tribal girls' hostel at Imphaal's Lambulane town. They singled out the Naga girls from the Kuki girls and raped them repeatedly. It had later come to light that five of the more beautiful of these girls were so brutally raped that they fell unconscious and they had to be rushed to the hospital in the dead end of the night. The years 1992 and 1993 saw some of the deadliest Naga Kuki clashes in Manipur. No media of that time reported about this. No newspaper, no television media, no print media. There was no report of this. It was on the 3rd of June 1992 a deadly shootout took place between the Naga insurgent outfit, the NSCN, that is the National Socialist Council of Nagaland, and a Kuki militant outfit, the Kuki National Army, near a village called Bongjang, which is situated at a distance of around 8 to 9 kilometers from More town. There was an exchange of fire which led to the killing of one Kuki man. His name was Onkolet Haukip. And as a result of this killing, immediately on the very next day, the Kuki Students Organization, KSO, of Chandel district in Manipur, called for a shutdown, a complete shutdown in More to protest against the killing of this person, the Kuki. And on that same night, Kuki youth who were armed with guns and sticks, they announced through loudspeakers of the churches that Nagas should leave More town within 24 hours or face dire consequences. This had led to a mass exodus of the Nagas residing in and around More for fear of the armed Kuki commandos. And no Naga dares returning to More even today. And just a few days after this incident, there was an excursion group of Mao Naga Students Union, which was beaten up. They were abused and they were humiliated at the More bus station by some armed Kuki youngsters who were high on drugs. And these same youth also later they entered the hotel rooms of the Naga girls. They ransacked their luggage and other belongings and molested them, raped them. So Nagas have been the victims of unspeakable, unbearable harassment, torture, and loot in the hands of the Kukis in More. Their atrocities, the Kuki atrocities, have even spread to other Naga-dominated districts of Manipur, such as Ukhrul, Senapati, Tamenglong, and even some parts of Churachandpur district. I think that's all I have to say here.
Thank you for sharing that. That was really tough to listen to, and I could tell it was hard for you to even speak about. So, thank you for sharing that with us. So, with this being said, the obviously the recent developments is kind of scary to the people of the region because knowing the history of what's happened there, it's I can only imagine the horror that they feel. Now, can we talk about how the drug trade, just the drug trade itself, and why in Moray it's thriving over there?
Yes, yes, it was in fact towards the late 1980s and the beginning of the 1990s that nearly all insurgent groups of the Northeast they came to depend. They were beginning to depend in some measure, in some way or the other, on the drug trade to finance their armies, and the strategic location of the Northeast on the western corner, right on the western corner of Myanmar's infamous Golden Triangle, which is one of the two largest opium producing regions in the world, besides the Golden Crescent of northwestern India. So the location of Northeast near to the Golden Triangle was naturally, this was one of the reasons which brought the militants closer to the drug trade. As per an estimate of the INCB, I was recently going through of the International Narcotics Control Bureau. Uh, it was specifically mentioned that countries around the Golden Triangle, particularly Myanmar, produce more than 70% of the drugs that are available globally. So this, in part, explains the routing of the channels of the drug trade from the Golden Triangle to the states of the Northeast. Also, the various militant organizations of Myanmar, particularly the KIA, the Kachin Independence Army, the Burmese Communist Party, and also the Arakan Liberation Party of the Rohingyas, soon began developing linkages with various militant outfits of the Northeast, such as the ULFA of Assam, that is the United Liberation Front of Assam, and the NSCN, the National Socialist Council of Nagaland. When you're asking me about More and the drug war in More, these the drugs are brought up to the border town of Tamu, which is situated along the India-Myanmar international border in Manipur, and as well as the Bangladesh-Myanmar border along the Naf River, under the protection of the rebel groups of Myanmar, whose names I just mentioned. And it is from here that the northeastern insurgent groups and Bangladeshi syndicates take over and push the drugs further inland. The porous India Myanmar border, it is extremely suitable for the free movement of insurgents and as well as drugs and narcotics. The free passage between the border towns of More in Manipur and Tamu in Myanmar help to facilitate this process further. And insurgents on both sides of the border control the illicit trade and trafficking of drugs and narcotics on the Lido Road. Lido Road is situated between Assam and the Yunnan province of China. Uh, Also, common economic interests, shared ethnicity, these factors also have sustained this mutually beneficial illegal drug enterprise for a long time now in the Northeast. Also, inefficiency of our security personnel, complicity on both sides of the border are some of the other contributory factors that have made Northeast India, major route in the network of drug trafficking.
So, okay. And can we also talk about why Manipur is ideal for poppy cultivation? Why the environment is ideal for that?
Yes. Yes, good question. Manipur it's true. It is the hotbed of poppy cultivation. So here we must firstly understand that a huge portion of Manipur's border with Myanmar, especially in the district of Churachandpur, where the violence first erupted, it is still unguarded. Although the government is doing the best possible it can, but a huge portion of this border still remains unfenced because of the inhospitable nature of the terrain, and drugs and narcotic substances, particularly high quality heroin and brown sugar, is smuggled into Manipur through Myanmar from the Golden Triangle. Drug trafficking from Myanmar, extortion, and various other forms of organized crime are the major sources of funding for most of the insurgent outfits of the Northeast. Their leaders are well known to encourage farmers in the border districts of Manipur, Nagaland, Assam, and Arunachal Pradesh to cultivate poppy. And in the absence of other gainful agricultural alternatives and employment avenues, the region has become a victim of poppy cultivation on a massive scale, especially the state of Manipur. And nowhere has the cultivation of poppy assumed such an organized form as in Manipur, which is also one of the major reasons behind the current unrest. You see, the fact that a section of the farmers in Manipur has been encouraged, has been prompted to cultivate poppy for earning greater profits has already been underscored in several reports and research papers. But poppy farming, most importantly, poppy farming in Manipur is prohibited under the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act of 1985. But the findings of several research studies, as I just mentioned, conducted earlier, and also data, if we look at the data on on poppy cultivation that has been released by the government of Manipur, clearly show that this phenomenon has spread across the hills of the state and also some zones in the Imphal Valley as well. The overall soil quality and the climatic conditions of Manipur also are extremely suitable for the cultivation of several high yielding varieties of poppy which cannot be cultivated elsewhere in the northeast and as well as in Myanmar. In fact, few months back, an Inspector General of Police in Manipur had claimed that the shift from agro and horticulture related activities to poppy cultivation has been a consequence of the relatively smaller size of the opium product and lesser price fluctuations, even though the cost of poppy cultivation is higher. But despite price fluctuations, poppy cultivators generally do not suffer any major loss, and no other crop can bestow the farmers. So, like once they are into the cultivation of poppy, no other crop can bestow upon these farmers a profit of such a huge margin as poppy does. And moreover, given the near complete absence of law and order in the hill districts of Manipur, where the insurgents almost run a parallel government, especially the border districts, no penalties as yet being imposed upon the cultivation of poppy. You know, the fast multiplication of these poppy plantations in the hill districts is quite well understood. The drug cartels also have a major role to play in this. The drug cartels of in the neighboring countries of mainly China, Bangladesh, and Nepal, they have been known to induce the poverty-stricken farmers of Manipur to undertake poppy cultivation. And this had become apparent several times earlier in the past. In fact, just a few months before the beginning of the conflict in May 2023, two persons, I remember, were arrested in the national capital of India with 50 kilograms of opium. And it had later come to light that the supplier, who was from Manipur, had been in the drug trade for the past 5 years. And this incident came close on the heels of a similar episode last year when 25 kilograms of heroin was seized again. It was seized in Delhi from two drug traffickers who hailed from Manipur. So we can understand the magnitude of the problem from this.
Okay. So thank you for that, for sharing that with us. Can we speak? Can you tell us a little bit about the infrastructure and connectivity in the Northeast, and how I believe there's a railroad project that's happening in Manipur, and does that have any impact on the situation?
Yes, true. And see, it is not coincidental, and I've mentioned this several times earlier as well. It is not coincidental that the conflict in Manipur began at a time when several important infrastructure and connectivity projects in the region are almost on the verge of their completion. The most important of all being, of course, the IMTT highway, that is the India Myanmar Thailand trilateral highway, and the Imphal Jiribam railway connectivity project. Uh, the world's tallest pier railway bridge near a place called Khumji over the valley of the Ijai River near Manipur's Noni district is a part of this crucial Imphal Jiribam railway connectivity project. Now, see, building an Indian railways network that reaches and connects the seven sisters of the Northeast has always been a very, very challenging and daunting task, considering the inhospitable natural geographical conditions of this region. And yet, to be able to build the world's tallest railway bridge in the Himalayan ranges in the Northeast is a truly remarkable feat. The Northeast Frontier Railway had started construction on the Imphal Jiribam railways back in the year 2008 when it was officially sanctioned by the government of India. It is a broad gauge railway track which links the town of Jiribam in the westernmost corner of Manipur, that is adjoining the Kachar district of southern Assam in the Barak Valley, to Manipur's capital city of Imphal. Covering a distance of around 220 kilometers. And at present, the route from Imphal to Jiribam consists of nine railway stations. Jiribam, Noni, and Imphal being the major ones. But with this new line, the Imphal Jiribam railway line, which is going to have 11 railway stations spanning over five districts, ensuring efficient operation of the railway services. Initially, this project was supposed to be completed by March 2020, but its construction is now is almost in the advanced stages of its completion now and expected to be completed by January-February 2024. And after its completion, Imphal, Manipur's capital city, Imphal, will become the fourth capital city in the northeast to be connected via a rail link with the rest of the country through Silchar, Haflong, Lamding, and Guwahati. So this is going to drastically reduce the time of an exhausting road journey of 11 to 12 hours currently from Jiribam to Imphal to just 2.5 hours. And the larger objective of the government behind the Imphal Jiribam railway project is to connect all the state capitals of India with the northeastern region, and most importantly to ensure connectivity with the Trans-Asian railway network in the near future. It also aims to connect Kolkata to Kunming via Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, and Imphal to Mandalay in Myanmar. So the project has its own economic and strategic significance, undoubtedly, not just for the Northeast but the rest of Bharat too, because it is going to help India in its defense and military operations against China, to counter the influence of China over Myanmar and the Southeast Asian continent. In fact, the Indian government is dealing with this project strategically to strengthen trade and commercial relations with Southeast Asia. And definitely, Manipur being a landlocked state, the project upon completion is definitely going to improve connectivity and bring about economic prosperity of the region, because it is going to make transportation and communication much more simple and easy, especially for people residing in the Valley area. But yes, political stability in the northeast and government patronage to railway projects such as these are very important for all the routes to become fully functional soon.
So something like this, all these developmental infrastructure projects, that's not in the best interest of the separatists and other parties involved, right? Because they wouldn't want
Right.
India to be connected. Makes sense. Uh, Now, can we speak a little bit about the missionaries' role in obstructing any infrastructural progress in the Northeast?
right? This project itself is a very good example. The Imphal Jiribam railway project I just spoke, which I just
Yeah.
mentioned, this is a very good example of how militancy has been a major hindrance in the execution and completion of vital infrastructure in the Northeast. Logistical hindrances, bad weather induced by heavy monsoonal rains, and the accompanying floods, the massive landslides that take place annually, are definitely some of the reasons which have been obstructing infrastructural developments in this region time and again. But we must also understand that the construction work on projects such as these has been frequently disturbed by the presence of several militant outfits, separatist outfits in the region. Many engineers involved in the Imphal Jiribam railway project have been shot. Many of them have been kidnapped, taken to unknown destinations, and killed by unknown miscreants. They could not be traced later. There was an event sorry there was an incident on the evening in December 20, I don't remember the date, in December 2016, when an NF railway engineer from West Bengal, who was working as a project manager in this project, in the Imphal Jiribam railway project. He was working as a project manager, and at that time he was supervising some construction work of a tunnel. He was abducted by a group of unidentified armed militants from the work site. It was in Manipur's Makru area in Tamil Nadu district. It is a Naga dominated district. And several other workers were also thrashed by these armed militants to create a situation of terror. And although the site of the incident was, although it was already protected by the personnel of the 5th Manipur Rifles, and the nearest CRPF post was informed about the matter immediately after the militants had left, but they arrived at the site only the following day. So, the presence of several militant organizations in Manipur and its neighboring regions in the Northeast as a whole is a major security concern for the people involved in these projects, especially for the for the engineers and technicians who work on site, in the form of frequent threat calls and messages, attacks, firing, kidnapping for ransom. And outsiders visiting these areas, they are provided armed escorts, and they are always advised to move in groups. So as a result of these and several other such criminal cases of abduction of railway workers, supervisors, and engineers from the project sites, panicked workers, they have fled uh, to their own hometowns, only to return as and when adequate security cover is being provided to them. And although the workers have been trying their best to complete the project soon, but this has been, militancy has been one of the major factors behind the delay of infrastructure projects in the Northeast. The government is playing its best possible part by deploying security forces along the strategic locations uh, to ensure the safety and security of the workforce here, and as well as the assets. In fact, the center is placing a special thrust upon improving railway connectivity in these neglected areas of the Northeast. And at the project site, when we go there, we can see more than thousands of security personnel from across the security forces, including Assam Rifles, Manipur Rifles, CRPF, the Indian Reserve Battalion, state police, and also the railway police force. They are all present anytime. But it is also very important that the local people of the area and other the CSOs, they support and lend their helping hand to everyone involved in these projects.
Wow, man, that's a really scary thought to think about. You could just be an engineer,
Right.
and you get kidnapped or shot for just doing your job, and yeah, that's unfortunate. Can we speak a little bit about just kind of a brief history about the insurgency in Manipur, and maybe also like what role the missionaries play in that?
Yes. Chiefly, it is a phenomenon of the post independence era, because missionary activity was also increasing. The tacit support being provided to the religious proselytization activities of the Christian missionaries by the central government post 1947, increasing rate of conversions, and the simultaneous rise of insurgency. Almost all the states of the Northeast being impacted by insurgency, one after the other. In Manipur, when you're asking me about Manipur, insurgency is a phenomenon of the post independence era, just like the other states of this region. And the communists had a very important role to play in this, with the long term objective of creating discord between what they refer to as mainland India and the Northeast. And uh, the history of communism in Manipur, it goes back to the time of the Second World War, and the Kuomintan's call for a proletarian revolution in 1949. Manipur had maintained its independence until the lapse of British paramountcy in 1947. 2 years later, in September 1949, the governor of Assam, that time Sri Prakasha, upon Sardar Patel's initiative, had invited the Maharaja of Manipur, Maharaja Bodha Chandra, to Shillong for conducting talks. And on the first day of this meeting, that was in September 18, 1949, the governor presented to the Maharaja a merger agreement. We need to understand about this merger agreement when we are talking about insurgency in Manipur. So the governor presented to Maharaja Bodha Chandra a merger agreement whereby Manipur would be merged with the Union of India. Although Maharaj Bodha Chandra was initially reluctant to sign this merger agreement, to agree to this deal, but he finally signed this agreement, according to which Manipur was to be incorporated under the Government of India's Part C category of states from October 1949 onwards. But this agreement was kept in secrecy until 15th October 1949 for certain obvious reasons. The most important of these reasons was the simmering discontent in the region caused by the Naga insurgency, and also to check the increasing socio-political clout of the communists in Manipur. The larger Manipuri public opinion was in favor of the merger agreement, Manipur's merger with India. But the radical forces, which were organized along the Maoist line, they opposed the merger of Manipur with Bharat. Voices of protest here and there in Manipur against the state's so-called forced merger they were being strategically manipulated by the communists to create a false impression that Manipur has been annexed as a colony of the Indian Union. It has been annexed as a colony of the Indian state. There was a famous Manipuri social activist of that time, Hijam Irabot Singh. Irabot Singh was used as a pawn for fulfilling the larger communist agenda. And the communists under Irabot, they now sought to, what they said, liberate Manipur from what they termed as the feudalism and semi-colonialism of the Manipuri kings and the Indian state in particular. So their objective now was those typical communist objectives: the installation of a popular, responsible government in Manipur, revision of land revenue, compulsory education for all, and most importantly, the right to self-determination for the people of Manipur. And on that same day of 15th October 1949, following the merger agreement, an executive order was passed, which led to the dissolution of the Manipur State Assembly and the elected Council of Ministers. And by the time Hijam Irabot Singh died in Myanmar in 1951, the seeds of protest had already been sown in the Manipuri society, which eventually germinated into a full blown militancy by the early 1960s and the 1970s.
Wow. Now that was great. So it has its roots in the independence era of the actual
Right.
insurgency. Okay. So now can we go into the another question about the statehood of Manipur and the imposition of the Armed Forces Special Protection Act, Special Powers
Yes.
Act, I should say. Yep.
Yes, AXPA. Yes, yes, yes. So Manipur became a union territory by mm, the Seventh Amendment Act
Okay.
of the Constitution of India, 1955. Sorry, 1956. And by this time, yes, 1956.
Mhm.
By this time, the common people of Manipur had they could realize that the fast growing communist influence in their state can only be checked through its integration with India, through Manipur's integration with India, because the communist danger was looming large, and accordingly, an agitation for the restoration of responsible government that began in April 1960 ultimately led to the grant of statehood to Manipur in 1972. B.K. Nehru was sworn in as the governor. And although the status of Manipur was now raised to that of a full-fledged state within the Union of India, the central government's mishandling of the situation was responsible to a large extent for causing distress among the people in the times to come. The drug war was going on. The markets of Manipur were being flooded with IMFL, Indian made foreign liquor, drugs of cannabis origin. The government was aware of this situation. With the death of Hijam Irabot and the consolidation of state power under the new system of governance, the those forces which were against the merger agreement, that is the anti-merger communist forces in Manipur, they were contained, but only temporarily. So in 1978, soon thereafter, secessionist groups again resurfaced in Manipur, each group exercising control over different areas of the state and different groups and communities of people. So this marked the beginning of the second deadly phase of militancy in the state. A few years before Manipur was granted statehood, Hijam Irabot Singh's unfinished task was taken up in March, April, in the period of March, April 1969, uh, by an underground organization called the Revolutionary Government of Manipur, RGM, which was led by a person called Arambam Somarendra Singh. A decade later, however, this underground organization, the RGM, was dissolved by another militant outfit called the PLA, the People's Liberation Army, along with others such as the UNLF, the United National Liberation Front, People's Revolutionary Party of Kangle Park, the Kangle Park Communist Party, etc. Uh, Red colored Chinese propaganda paper balloons, which are referred to as chebons in Manipur. These were put up by the PLA in defiance against the state, in defiance against the government. And these balloons used to dot the skyline of Manipur in the late 1970s and the early 1980s. All economic activities in Manipur were virtually stopped by the militants who took over control of the state every day between dusk and dawn. And this was true in the till the 1990s. This was true not just for Manipur but for almost every other state in the northeast, including Assam. And besides numerous bomb blasts, explosions, and other destructive activities, they began to raise substantial amounts of money through extortion. Many Manipuri middle class families had temporarily shifted to places outside of Manipur at this time. The usual practice being that the main earning member of the family remaining behind, while the others, especially the school and the college going children, living outside the state for education purposes who never return back. Uh, when you are asking me about AFSPA, it was on the 8th of September 1980, Manipur was declared a disturbed area, and all revolutionary organizations functioning in the state were declared to be unlawful. The AFSPA, Armed Forces Special Powers Act of 1958, was invoked in Manipur for the first time now. So, this led to the beginning of an era of violence and insurrection in Manipur, a situation that continues to ail the state till this day.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that so much. Now, lastly, obviously, you do have an upcoming book on Manipur, and I'm sure you'd want to share a few words about that. So please tell us about your book, and it's is it released yet, or are you going to announce the release date?
Thank you so much for that question. This is going to be my first book, and
Okay.
we have collaborated. Three of us have collaborated. It's titled The Manipur Conundrum: History, Exodus, and Conversion. So it is the work of three authors. Three of us are there. Author of the bestseller Saffron Sword Series 1 and Series 2, Manushi
Okay. Yeah.
Sinhaji. Uh, Myself and Vladimir Adityanathji. He's a social activist working on the ground in the Northeast. The book, I would say, it is going for printing in December. The book is a historical and I would say a historical and socio-political text of Manipur from the times of the Mahabharata till the present times. And that is why we have divided the book into three different sections. Section one is the historical and civilizational perspective, which has been contributed by Manushi Sinhaji.
Mhm.
Uh, the Burmese invasions and the scenario after that in the Northeast, the coming of the British, the advent of the missionaries, conversions, also the period post 1947, that is after independence, the issues of drug trafficking, illegal immigration. This is section two, and this has been contributed by myself. So right from the Burmese invasions of the 18th century, my section of the book, my part of the book dwells upon uh, the violence committed by the people from Burma, that is present day Myanmar, at different periods of time in history. So in this context, I have focused not just on Manipur, but the other states of the Northeast as well, which have been a witness to such violence numerous times in the past. I have also covered the post independence era, especially with certain very specific incidents, such as the loss of the historic Kabau Valley by Manipur to Myanmar, its consequences on the larger socio-political landscape of Manipur, and the rise of insurgency. Also, the ever increasing socio-political clout of the church, illegal immigration, and the problem of narco-terrorism, with Manipur being at the crossroads of the infamous Golden Triangle, have been taken up in detail. And the third part of the book is the Manipur violence of 2023. Basically, the ground reports and testimonies of the victims that have not been covered by any media channel. This has been contributed by Vladimir Adityanathji.
Oh wow, I really like that approach with the book. I think I really like how you connect it to the ancient times, to the Mahabharata times, because the
Yes,
Hindu culture of the Northeast is kind of neglected and not really talked about. So I like
right.
that connectivity. So and I
Because there
mean
has
if
already been a genocide. There has already been a cultural genocide of the Hindu civilization in the Northeast.
Yeah. And if I mean, I learned so much from just this interview, so I can only imagine what I'll learn reading the book. So I encourage everybody, please stay tuned and, you know, uh, get the book when it comes out. So for sure. Well, thank you for your time, Dr. Ankita Ji. This is a great interview, and we look forward to having you back on the show again.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Abhishekji. Thank you, Citti Media, the entire team. Looking
Thank you.
forward. Okay.
Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you.
Don't
Namaste.
forget to like,
Namaste.
share, and subscribe, everyone.
Please remember to subscribe to us and switch on the notifications for this channel. For our other social media links, more content, and to support our work, please visit citti.net. Dhanyavad. Namaskar.